Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue our work in Dan, and we are giving floor to the Principal Deputy Chief Monitor Alexander Hook. Please welcome.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Yet again, we have seen an increase in the level of violence in Donetsk region. The number of ceasefire violations recorded by the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission did in fact rise by 25% compared to the previous week. The escalation was noted in all the usual hotspots, but it was very noticeable in the western and northwestern outskirts of Horlivka and in the Avdiivka-Yassinovata Donetsk airport area. A further indication of a deterioration was the increased use of artillery, almost double that which we saw the previous week. Significantly, 90% of recorded artillery explosions occurred around Horlivka. The situation in Luhansk region was better than in the previous week. We registered 40% decrease in the number of ceasefire violations, mostly around Stanica Luhanska bridge. Western Luhansk region, however, was a different story. On Saturday, for example, we just had 2 hours where we registered 170 explosions in the Popasna, Kalinove, Pervomaisk area. As usual, where violence and other violations of the Minsk agreements are happening, there are inevitably restrictions on the SMM's freedom of movement. And so, in Western Luhansk region, we have experienced many restrictions, some of them in the air. On Monday, on 2 separate occasions, the mission noted small arms fire targeting a SMM mini unmanned aerial vehicle. It happened first near so-called LPR-controlled Kalinove, and later near so-called LPR-controlled Kadivka, formerly Stakhanov. Fortunately, the UAV managed to land safely on both occasions. The same cannot be said about our long-range unmanned aerial vehicle. Later on that day, just before midnight, while flying over government-controlled Avdiivka, approximately 600 meters away from the contact line, the SMM long-range unmanned aerial vehicle crashed for reasons that have yet to be established. Like with every other violation of the Minsk agreements, there has been no accountability. No one has been held responsible, and no one has been punished. Leadership on both sides of the contact line needs to demonstrate their commitment to ceasefire by communicating publicly the steps they take to deal with violators within their ranks. Without this, immunity will continue, and more violations and restrictions on the SMM will continue. The impact on SMM monitoring will become more severe. This will, and has already to some extent, impact on our ability to verify compliance with commitments. Trust building and hence normalization becomes impossible in such circumstances. I therefore call for full and effective investigations by the Joint Center for Control and Coordination. If the sites are truly committed to adhering to the Minsk process, they must enable the JCCC to do so. This is the least we and the people of Donbass can expect. Dear friends, Avdiivka is of course one of the main hotspots. This is in itself proof and a hint as to why the SMM has lost a long-range UAV there. We know from experience that there is a direct correlation between ceasefire violations and restrictions imposed on the SMM's patrol and property. There is another possible reason why our UAV are being targeted. It appears that the sites using our UAVs as a sort of shield, in the same way that they position weapons in and around residential areas and close to our forward patrol bases, they fly their UAVs when the SMM UAVs are in the air. They are using the SMM UAVs as cover. And I ask for the first footage. Here is what our UAV saw one night in Avdiivka not long ago. You see there a second UAV. On the ground in Avdiivka and in neighboring so-called DPR-controlled Yasinovata, our freedom of movement has also been restricted. In one instance, the so-called DPR stopped us from monitoring repair work. The repairs are necessary for the working of the water filtration plant there. The Joint Center for Control and Coordination did not facilitate the provision of security assurances. Clean drinking water is not a luxury, it is a basic human right. There is an irony that people purporting to defend rights should violate these basic rights, and the sites try to justify this kind of restriction, telling us there are security threats. Now, security threats do indeed sometimes exist, but the responsibility of the sites to remove those threats is theirs. Where unexploded ordnance or mines exist, the sites must remove them. They, after all, place them there. Where violence is occurring, the sites must stop it. They are the ones who are engaged in it. The sites are responsible for the security threats. They must remove them. The sites must allow the SMM unfettered access to all areas. They have committed to do it in writing, yet in reality, they fail to do so. The most fundamental right, of course, is the right to life. Every day, that right is negated or threatened for many people. On the next picture is what a family in so-called DPR-controlled Dokuchaevsk woke up to see on Tuesday morning. As you can see, a bullet came through their front window. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Violence is happening all along the contact line, every day, every night. It's happening for a very simple reason. Because the sites have refused to withdraw all weapons from the proposed security zone, they have made it a very insecure place indeed. Now the next video, please. This is what our UAV saw last Friday night in Tonenke, just north of Avdiivka. Note that this is a surface-to-air missile system traveling through a residential area. Next picture, please. Here is what we saw in so-called DPR-controlled Kaiutune. Again, it's nighttime, so the image is perhaps a bit blurry, but what you see here are two towed howitzers. In both instances, the SAM system before and the howitzers here, each side is in clear violation of the Minsk agreement. We know these weapons are not there for decoration. Last week, our long-range UAV, before it crashed in Avdiivka, captured footage of these weapons in use. Dear friends, all of what I'm going to show you is in clear violation of the Minsk agreements. And for those who think the SMM is not monitoring at night, it is also important to point out that all of the following footage is nighttime footage. Next video, please. On this footage, you can clearly see several anti-aircraft airbursts targeting what we suspect is an unmanned aerial vehicle. Thankfully, it wasn't ours. Next video, please. The next night, last Friday, our UAV captured this imagery, also in Avdiivka. Here you can see multiple mortar impacts in Avdiivka. Next video, please. Later that night, also at the edge of Avdiivka, our UAV spotted the following. Here we can see an artillery round hitting the railway tracks. And next footage, please. And in this footage, also taken in that night at the edge of Avdiivka, 2 artillery rounds are seen to target the motorway bridge there. Next video, please. The same night, over neighboring so-called DPR-controlled Spartak, the UAV filmed this. What you see here are mortar rounds being fired in the direction of Avdiivka. Over the week, we have seen the results of such firing in many places on both sides of the contact line. From Komiternovo all the way along the contact line as far northeast as Stanica Luhanska. I, however, was particularly disturbed by one incident. On Tuesday, our monitors followed up on reports of shelling and craters caused by shelling in government-controlled Krasnohornivka, just west of Donetsk. At school number 1, there they saw a 125mm tank round that had penetrated the 60 centimeter thick south-facing wall of the first floor of that school. Dear friends, there has been much barbarity over the past 2 years. An attack on a place of learning for children, no matter how many times it happens, is a step too far. If that incident can teach us anything, it is that the violence all over Donbass must stop. Children returning to school in September need books and nurturing, not tanks and destruction. As usual here, at the end of my statement, I would like to inform you about the latest mission numbers. As of today, the mission has 697 monitors, of whom 588 are deployed in the east. In addition, there are 305 Ukrainian colleagues and 85 other international staff working for the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. Are there any questions or clarifications? Yeah, please.
Hi.
Hello.
Remember, on previous briefings, you gave us some information about meetings in Minsk, Interlateral Contact Group. Have you been there the last time? And if you know what the obstacles that sides cannot reach the agreement about disengagement from contact line, they are discussing and they are looking towards at least 3 points along the line where they need to withdraw troops. What's the obstacles that they cannot reach this agreement? Thanks.
I have to refer you to the Trilateral Contact Group itself. It's up to them to comment on progress made in that format. But I would like to use the opportunity to reiterate the need to disengage from areas where the sides are standing too close. They are in areas such as Avdiivka, but also down in Komiternovo, as close as 50 meters, and this close proximity leads to tensions that often translate into long firefight. The only sustainable way to bring about a stable ceasefire is to separate the forces there to a distance where engagement is not that easy.
Mr. Hook, 2 more questions. They will be in Ukrainian, so please take the headphone.
Good afternoon. Is there any information that European monitors skip the most part of war? I mean that the hostilities are at night when the OSCE monitors stop their work. How can you comment on that? Andrew Kramer in the New York Times. Can you comment this article in the New York Times? Is it true that you are not working at night when there is when there are major hostilities?
Thank you. The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission works around the clock. I have just shown you multiple images taken during nighttime. Our monitors are working throughout the night with the technology such as the cameras mounted to the UAVs or cameras such as the one in Shirokine that observes around the clock. In addition to that, our monitors have static observation posts in the 14 locations along the contact line where they work through the night. All the results of this observation can be found in our reporting, including in the Russian and Ukrainian language that we publish every day, with the exception of Sunday. Thank you.
And the last question.
Information agency, Crimean, please. Can you tell whether OSCE SMM records the presence of Russian citizens on the territory of Donbass? Do you have any methods to record any presence of armed forces in Crimea? Do you monitor any situation in Crimea as well?
The OSCE Special Monitoring Mission is not an intelligence gathering operation. The OSCE Monitoring Mission is a civilian unarmed observer mission. We report what we see, we report what we hear, and we report what we can triangulate. Now, over the past years, since we are operating in the areas not controlled by the government, we have been documenting specific types of weapons, specific types of armory. We have been reporting about our discussions and interviews with persons taken prisoners by the Ukrainian armed forces who claim to be members of Russian units operating in the areas currently not controlled by the government. These are the facts that we have been documenting on a regular basis in our daily reports, which are publicly available. It is for others to draw conclusions based on these facts. With regard to Crimea, the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission has a field office in Kherson, a monitoring team there, and that office also reports on developments at the ABL there bordering the Crimea Peninsula.
Thank you, Mr. Hook. At this point, the press conference is finished. Thank you for coming and looking forward to seeing you here next week.
Thank you.
Шановні колеги, наступна подія